everyone, welcome to School of Scarlett. I'm so happy to have you here today. Today we're going to be talking about the journey of a woman. So whether you're a woman or not, I encourage you to watch this video because it lays out really how we kind of unfold, how we kind of evolve. And for a woman, that really is in cycles, that really is very defined in ways that we can really see and understand. For a man, not so much, but if you follow along with this video, you will get some more insight around cycles and changes because men do experience this just in a different way. So this is an energetic talk. I will be talking about my own stories, my own experiences, and just seeing what unfolds here. So I'm actually in my daughter's bedroom. This was actually sparked because I was cleaning her bedroom, and as I'm cleaning it, I'm seeing things like she's got like trophies and plaques and stuff on that side of her room. And over here, she's got all kinds of pictures with her friends and things on the walls. And she's got notes from her husband and all kinds of stuff. So I'm seeing all of these things. There's a journal here next to the bed. And, you know, she's got just all kinds of things that she's got from school and all of that. So this journey of becoming a woman is something that unfolds in stages. So I want to share with you those stages here through my experience. And like I say, in cleaning my daughter's room and being around that energy, you feel that change from what I had was a child a few years back, and now she's a teenager, an adolescent, becoming a woman. So it's very different from a child to an adolescence in any stage. So I'm going to continue on here and kind of share with you by starting off with the child stage. So I'm going to share my experience. My experience of a child was very typical. It might be what, you know, you typically hear that little girls like, you know. I enjoyed dressing up, playing in my mom's makeup, wearing her high heel shoes and trying to walk around the home. I had a kitchen set and I enjoyed cooking and pretending that I was cooking and cleaning and taking care of baby dolls. And so all of that was what I really enjoyed. And it really was the way that I enjoyed playing, really up until the probably way too old of an age, maybe like 10 or 11 or 12. I can remember being even in 5th grade, still playing with Barbies and really imagining and playing with them. For me, Barbies were not collectibles. They were actually toys that I played with and imagined with and really worked out my own, you know, inner understandings of things through playing. And so for me, play was very important, and it was part of my unfolding as a woman because very early on, I was already exhibiting those very typical things that you would see young girls and, you know, to come women experiencing and wanting. And where that came from, a lot of it is evolutionary. A lot of it is biology because we do create. We are meant to have babies. We're meant to create here on this earth. So a lot of that is very biological. And a lot of that is also very learned. So I had a mother that was very feminine, and I was able to see that about her at all times. I don't really remember a time that she wasn't in her feminine energy. So for me, and as a child, you know, you usually look up to your mother. And so for me, my mother was what I wanted to be. You know, she was beautiful. She knew what she was doing around the home. She had me and my brother. And so she was a mother and she was married, you know. So all of this to me was what I thought was what was perfect, what was meant for me one day. And it seemed very amazing. Now, of course, there's many other things that come into play, right? We listen to TV, movies, all of that. Although I'll say that I wasn't very much involved with that sort of thing anyhow. So this was very natural. And so the child stage is very imaginative too. I remember not as early on in those stages, but a little bit later on, really being very imaginative in my play and how I played and expressed. And like I said, even up till the grade of 5th grade, I was still imagining in my play. And so there was a lot of things that happened in childhood that were very, you could call mystical. There was things that I saw and, you know, all of this. But because of that, being a child, a lot of what is seen, a lot of what is expressed is not exactly seen as true, as real, because it's very immature still. So the child is not seen yet as very mature. Now for the feminine child, for the woman, what I'm talking about here, unfolding as a woman, the experience of being a little girl, of being a child and being that little girl, is really under the authority of your father as well. So you have the aspect of really looking up and admiring your mother and really wanting to be that. That's your first clue of what you want to be. And so there it is. But now, where is the authority? The authority comes in through the masculine, which creates the structure, the rules, the containment for the feminine. And so the feminine is always seems to be under someone in some sort of authority. I just want you to see this, and I'll turn it around here for you at the end. So when she's a child, she's under her father. And so it's whatever father says, it's whatever that says in the home. Of course, the mother always has some sort of say, or at least in my home she did. But you know, there is that sort of feeling of there's an authority here. And so I go to my mother to ask her if I can do something, and she will ask my father, and they will come to an agreement. So there's that already understanding, or at least it was for me. And so I always knew that there was that authority there. So you go from being a child to now being an adolescent. Now the adolescent phase is really where you're trying to kind of understand what's happening. It's really kind of a shock. I can remember it for me. I think I kind of mentioned this in one of my videos before, that when I first recognized that what my body looked like as I was transitioning into an adolescent, you know, the body itself changes, right? It's so many different things that change. And in seeing the first evidence of change in something physical like my body, I began to really see things very differently. I remember having my first crush around I was in 6th grade, and I was really basically in love with this tiny little scrawny boy that everybody made fun of me for liking. He was very, very skinny, but he had this beautiful blonde curly hair. And of course, nobody liked him, but I did, because he looked like an angel to me. The hair, it was like an angel. When I saw that curly blonde hair, it was this kind of golden color. I wasn't looking at his body, I was looking at his hair. And so he looked like an angel to me. But anyhow, that was the first person that I had a crush on. And so I began to have those feelings and all of that happening, and really trying to get his attention. And so I began to see all these changes within myself. And I began to notice that I was really looking at myself. What did I look like? How was I acting? What was I saying to him? So I was very hyper vigilant suddenly about the way I looked, the way I acted, the things I did. And so this became a shift here also, where I will say, and just sharing my own personal experience very honestly, I kind of call this a stage of really wanting to fill yourself in with things, really build yourself up with stuff to give to the world, to have them accept you, have them like you. So for me, the first experience of that ever was with my crush. So what I started doing, and this all happened naturally, I just started wanting his attention. So I started wanting to know and do the things that he liked to do. Now, the things that he liked to do were very, very different than the things I like to do. He was involved in theater. He was wanting to be an actor one day, and all of these things. And I was a very shy, introverted girl that could hardly talk to anyone, really. I could hardly raise my hand, ask a question. And so to follow him and start to change myself to be like him is what I began to do, because I wanted to be with him. So I started to practice acting and singing and doing random things in my room. And anytime there was an audition, I was there, even though I probably wasn't very good, right? And I tried. I signed up for the theater class, and before you know it, within a year, I had moved up to advanced theater for the following year. I had gotten that good. And my talents just naturally came out. I was a very shy person, but as soon as I got on stage, it was very different. And everybody could see that, but at the same time, there was many distractions, the distractions of boys. So I could have really focused on theater, but I didn't. I focused on him. And unfortunately, he didn't continue with theater, and nor did I really. I had it in my heart, in my future. I wanted that for myself, but I would go in and out. Why? Because of distractions. And for me, the distractions have always really been very strong with the attention of usually that romantic counterpart. I'm a very romantic kind of person. I really indulge and really desire a lot of that romance. So for me, that was one area that I would get lost in. And you can see that's where a lot of the masks began because, it started with wanting to do theater, which is fine. But you're doing it for someone else, right? It's not really in your desire. It's very scary. But even love can even push you to some things that you never knew. So for me, it actually was a good unfolding. I was able to see a side of myself that I didn't know. And so a very interesting part of relationships and romantic relationships, especially for me, it seems that every time that I engage in a romantic relationship with someone, it opens up a new part of me that I didn't know was there. I literally didn't know it was there. I didn't know. And it opened it up. So this is all to say, don't be fearful of life. Even when something feels like a little scary, discern with your heart, but don't be scared to shut yourself off from everything. One of the things that can happen is we begin to believe negative thoughts. We begin to believe negative thought streams that come into our minds. And we don't trust ourselves to do things. And so maybe there is a girl you want to talk to, but you keep telling yourself, I can't do it. And then I can't do it and I can't do it. And you say it enough that the brain actually registers it as truth. And guess what happens then? You literally stop trying. So there's no more action. So these stories are all just to kind of open things up. There's no right or wrong way to do things. A lot of these relationships caused me a lot of heartache, but in the end, they opened up parts of me that I didn't know was there. So anyhow, with the adolescence, for me, it was a lot of trying to fill myself up and change myself in ways to fit in with the crowd, to fit in with these friends. I even got myself into a lot of trouble once. They asked me, a friend had asked me to do something that was against the law. And it was just taking something from a store. But anyhow, I did these things. So this was how high of what I was doing, how risky of a thing I was doing to really fit in with people around me. So this was the adolescence phase. And the other thing about me was I was very skinny. I was a very skinny girl. I thought I was average, but most people, would say that I was skinny. And also my best friend was even skinnier. So we were always kind of targeted for being very skinny. And so my best friend was actually teased. She was called Anorexic Annie for the longest time. And it's one of the most painful things she's ever dealt with, so that was something that recurred for her. For me, they didn't call me that, but it surely was something that I was aware of, that it was not a good thing to be that skinny. And that sounds silly because, of course, everybody talks about wanting to lose weight and be skinny. But see, bullying happens both ways. See, the heavy set people are sometimes bullied. We think typically they are the ones that are bullied. But believe it or not, a lot of the most beautiful people, my best friend is one of the most beautiful people physically. And I've seen this happen many times. Physically, even on the other spectrum, if you're skinny or very beautiful, you'll get teased for that. And it's just a matter of someone wanting to take that person's power. Anyhow, that was happening around adolescence. And so I was very aware that being skinny was not a good thing, because it was not a good thing for my best friend. And if I ever got caught in the fire, I was also targeted. So I began to look at other girls and things, and I really desired to have more of a full figure. I began to desire like a heavier set body. Like that became what I believed to be beautiful. So it's very strange. So now I actually think I look and I see bodies that are a little bit heavier set, and I believe those to be bigger. It's a really weird thing because I had such a hatred towards the skinnier body back then. So anyhow, that's what happened. And what I would do was I would try to do things like eat more, or in those days they had sort of like they do now, like waist trainers. And so I would try to do my waist, but where I would still have, the curves. And, of course it didn't really work that well, but I tried. And so these were the things that I was doing. And of course I wasn't really sharing this with people. These are things that happen within the feminine. There's so much that she hides, so much that she doesn't say, so much that's happening within. So all of this kind of filling in, filling out kind of period was happening. I was trying to learn skills, all kinds of stuff. At the time we had a computer for the first time. We had internet for the first time. And so of course there wasn't as much information as there is now, but I was reading all kinds of information. I was talking to all kinds of people online, chat rooms, and all of that was new, but I wasn't like scared of it. I was in there doing all of that. And so I was really exploring life outside of myself, and I was also exploring life within myself. Who am I? And I will tell you, and during this time, it was a very difficult time. The adolescent time, I can remember it was a period of a lot of self-hatred, a lot of wishing I was someone else. And I can clearly remember these thoughts. So these were thoughts that were very recurring. And there was a lot of comparison. And so really looking at the way other people lived, if I ever went to other people's homes, I always compared. I was always comparing. And it started off very early on. I can remember as a child, actually, my neighbor, one time she got hurt. And so she had like a bloody knee. And her parents brought some Band-Aids on, a first aid kit and everything, put it on her. And I was like very confused. I was like, wow, like that's what happens when you get hurt. Because I think in my family, they didn't really do it that way. Maybe I don't really remember having Band-Aids, and I don't really remember getting hurt that often either. But it was just something different. I saw the care and it seemed different in some way. And so I was comparing things and thinking, maybe I don't have what I should have, or what so there was a lot of comparison happening there. And so that program began to run through me at that point. And so this kind of continued on with comparing bodies, comparing all kinds of stuff. So then comes the stage after adolescence. So after adolescence, I've had some time to get to know my body, date a few boys, have a few friends, lose a few friends, learn a few lessons, all of that. Well, I was in go mode at this point. I was actually ready to either go to Hollywood and start my acting career trying to act, or I was ready to start getting married and go to college. I wanted it all. I wanted it all at once. And so I also noticed that there were still like a lot of things that I needed to do. And so anyhow, I had to kind of choose. This was a point where I had to choose what I was going to do with my life. And I'll tell you, I had a really strong desire to go on my own and just kind of leave everything, leave everyone, and just do my own thing regardless. I wanted to go to Hollywood. I at least wanted to try it, even if it was only for a year. And if it didn't work out, I'd come back. That was my internal, really wanting to do. But then anyhow, I met someone that proposed to me. And I was in a relationship with him. I loved him and all of that. So I was marriage minded. So that was appropriate. But I was still very young. I think I was 20 or about 20. I was around 20. And so I wasn't sure still yet. So I was kind of holding that back. And then I decided to go ahead and get married. And I'll tell you, the decision was more based on this false sense of security, false sense of safety in some way. So my reasoning was I already liked this person. I already loved them. I was already, with them marriage minded in that capacity. But my true desire is to go to Hollywood. But maybe if I marry this person, then they can come with me. Being a girl, a woman, I'll tell you, it is a constant thought that does happen about safety, about traveling alone, especially when you haven't done it. I had never traveled alone. Traveling alone, walking around alone, being at night alone, being alone with a man. Even when I do counseling alone with a man currently, and now in a room, most recently I've been sexually harassed a few times. So this is a constant thing that the woman, the feminine, has to worry about, her safety, because she is clearly physically smaller and can be overpowered by a man very easily, very easily. So there's a difference there, okay? So because of that, I kind of decided to take that route. I got married, and I really believed that at some point we would go out to Hollywood and I'd do a few auditions and it would happen. He knew that that was my desire. But my desire changed. I wanted a baby, and so then became the mother. I really tried to get pregnant. I had trouble with my fertility, but eventually I became a mother. So now we went, let's see, from child to adolescent to wife to mother very, very quickly. I got married when I was 20 years old. And by the time I was 22, 23, I had my daughter. My daughter was born when I was 23 years old. So all of these things happened very quickly. I settled into being a wife in some ways, but in a lot of ways it just felt like natural. But I mean, you know, it was still like a wife. I had duties, there's things at home. When I had my daughter, everything changed. Everything changed. I always desired to have a child. It was my greatest wish, really. And so when she was born, that was the most beautiful thing ever. And I felt unconditional love. And I really knew now what it was to love something outside of yourself. It's the most wonderful thing you will ever experience. So it's something that is just so unique. And even now when I close my eyes and think of it, it's so unusual because I've gone through a lot of things where I've had to kind of detach from things over the past few years through this awakening that I've been on. Just naturally, life has thrown this and that to kind of make me release different things. And life has even thrown me a wrench to release my daughter. There was a time where her father was trying to seek custody. Well, that all kind of settled out. But in that process, I really sat with that. And it's a connection, it's a bond when you're a mother, that it's almost like your soul what you are in a way does fragment into them. Of course we are all one, but this is a little different, almost as if it were a twin flame. And I've even sat with that and tried to examine that within myself. It almost feels like a twin flame connection. And in other ways, if you really sit with the thought of your child, it almost seems like a part of you. Really examine that. So when I go the deepest levels I can go, it really seems like a part of me that's just being expressed, what looks like in the form outside of me, just like everything is, but a little bit deeper. Like I say, it feels like a twin flame. Anyhow, when she was born, everything really changed. It was now about her, and everything was about her. And that was okay with me. That was totally okay with me because that's what I wanted. I loved that. See, when you love something, it's not about you. It's not about you. It's about them. It's about the experience. It just is. It's about the experience. You lose all sense of self. You lose all sense of attachment. It's just like you're there. And when it's with your child, it's very different because it's very natural. You can be totally yourself with them. So you feel no constrictions like you would with a friend or even a spouse. So it's a very beautiful connection. Anyhow, so when I had my daughter, I now became a mother. And like I say, I had no problem giving her all of my attention, all of my energy. And do you know what happened in that time period? I started probably neglecting a little bit of my duties to my husband. I started neglecting a little bit of the duties to myself. And before you knew it, I had gained a ton of weight. I was no longer even physically attractive. So a lot had changed with me. I was just focused completely on my child. And I had lost all sense of myself and other. And so this is just kind of to bring a pointer to anyone that's experiencing emptiness, non-duality. That is a stage. It really is. Because eventually bliss meets you. Love, unconditional love meets you. Because if we stay just in plain emptiness, if we're just depleting or just not even in this world, not engaging with this world, we literally wither out and die. It ends. So we have to engage in life. We have to engage in life. That's part of it. So the whole thing with having a child is that we have to create balance. And it's not even with a child, it's with a marriage, it's with anything in life. We have to create a balance between what is the work and the play. How we're taking care of ourselves and how we're taking care of others. Everything has to be a balance like this. We have to have a balance with ourselves, with even love and fear, because fear is even going to still come up here and there. All of these things, we have to have a balance. We can't be totally in fear and we can't be totally in love. Even if we're totally in love, we get so light, literally light in density, that we can float away. Like, I mean, you know, we can literally lose our minds. We can literally lose ourselves completely. There is a certain density, a certain balance we have to keep here on this earth. And that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother metaphysical, very deep story. But for the purposes of this, at that point, I really started to notice one day I had family pictures done for Christmas. And I had my family pictures back and I looked at them and I saw myself in that picture. And I looked like a 45-year-old woman. And at that time, I was in my late 20s or, you know, mid 20s. And I was wearing like black slacks and like this black sweater. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that just wasn't me. That just wasn't me. And when I looked at that picture, I knew that that was not me. And so a lot of things began to change here and there. Okay. And so for me, in my stage as a woman, I actually saw that. And I think it did create some sort of change within me. Because shortly after that, I had a lot of medical emergencies and things. And that's when I had my first near-death experience and awakening. My first awakening to my heart. I lost a ton of weight just naturally. I mean, I did start working out and doing very healthy things. But that all happened from the awakening very naturally. Like it has, I've had a second one. And so all of that cleared up. But in doing that, as the wife, I changed. I changed as the wife. I was not the same wife. So one day I talked to my husband because I was visited by an angel, and I've talked about this once in my videos. And I talked to him about it, and he's an atheist, and so he could not listen to that, and he asked me to never tell him about that again. I talked to him about this angel, and I think I shared with him my near-death experience. He couldn't handle it. And as I began to expand in my way of being, like being healthier, you know, eating better foods, doing all of these things, expanding my mind, expanding the things that I did, doing more things without him, these sorts of things. Looking back now, I can see that this created a problem for someone that was so set in atheism. This person was not looking to grow. So because one person is growing in a different direction, whichever direction they're going doesn't matter, but they're growing, and this person is anchored in, hunkered down, then we have a problem. So as a wife, there was no freedom there, but he did me a great favor and he removed himself from that. The universe did that for me. My manifestation, whatever happened to be, it did it. And I was able to break free from that to expand more, because at that time I was expanding. So I want you to also look at the life cycle or the unfolding of a woman. For example, for me with that relationship, I literally had to leave it. So you may find yourself in a situation where you're losing a relationship. You're losing even a marriage. You're losing friendships or something because you've had an awakening, or you've had something that's now shifted your consciousness, and you just don't believe the same things that maybe your friends believed, your husband believed, whoever it was. And there's just no reconciling that because they're hunkered down, they're anchored in, and you're allowing flow. So you're not, it doesn't matter to you. You're there. So for marriages, in terms of women, this is a time that could be difficult for the marriage. And for a longest of times, women have always been more spiritually evolved, it seems, in my opinion, than men. You know, they've been the ones that wanted to go to church more. They've been the ones that have been more intuitive. But they've been kind of shamed, or persecuted is the word for it. All the witch hunts. Anytime some woman had an intuition or had some idea of something, she was spurned at the stake, killed, stoned. If she ever went outside her marriage, did anything, if she ever portrayed herself outside of the mother archetype, she was shunned. She was killed. And if we look at stories from like the Bible or the Quran, or, any ancient, even like Greek mythology, as soon as women did anything to regain their power, they like were raped. I mean, they were hurt. Men came after them. And so this has been the story that we've pretty much heard for a long time. But there's different sides to women. And I'll just share something here as it's just kind of coming through in my mind. The story of Adam and Eve is not just Adam and Eve. There is another part to the feminine, and that is Lilith. Lilith was the original counterpart to Adam, and she was not created from his rib. She was created. And she wanted dominance over Adam. And so she was cast out, okay? So that was the original feminine. So we have Lilith, who what I would consider is the dark feminine. So if you're familiar with any of my feminine work, you can look at my playlist around feminine and masculine energy. Lilith to me represents the dark feminine. And Eve would represent the light feminine. So the mother, okay? So, but we need both. We need both. We need the feminine, the dark feminine, and the light, the dark and the light together. We need both. We need the mother and we need the whore. I don't know what the other one would be called, but every time that someone is not seen as the mother, like, for example, Mary Magdalene, they're cast out and called the whore, even though they were not a whore. That's just the label they put on them. If you're not the mother, you're the whore. That's just how it's seen. So anyhow, the last stage, which I have not gotten to, of womanhood would be when you become a widow. And when you become a widow, for women, most of the time, it can be that now you are on your own. But a lot of times, if you have a son, if there is a brother, if there is some other patriarchal person in the family, then now that becomes the authority for you, or the helper, the protector, the security for you. So it always seems that the feminine has some sort of containment from the masculine. I can tell you for myself, it is a little bit restricting to have containment when the containment is no longer needed, or the containment is too small for the being. So let's say we're trying to contain an elephant in a tiny cage. They're not going to be very happy. They're not going to be able to be an elephant, to do elephant things. So we have to expand their container. So whatever masculine, if you're a feminine being, whatever masculine figure you have in your life, do they allow expansion? See, for example, the atheist person I was talking about that anchors down is like, no, I'm an atheist and this is that. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. So they don't allow that into their reality. There's no expansion there. So if you are a feminine figure that's going to have a physical inform male counterpart or masculine counterpart, do they allow your expansion? Because we're all meant to grow and expand. So I'd like you to really examine that for yourself. Because we can either be the queen, which means that we can be matched with a divine masculine, a divine feminine, and a divine masculine. We can be the queen as the feminine, or hey, you can be the goddess. And what is the goddess? The goddess is not actually contained by any masculine. She harnesses both energies, the masculine and the feminine. And so that's why she's a goddess. And goddesses have always been attacked as well in history. Do some research into goddesses. This is very interesting. I'm really thinking about creating a feminine course because it is so fascinating to me. So if you're interested in more feminine videos or about that topic, please comment down below and let me know so that I can make more of these videos. Anyhow, I just wanted to kind of share my journey with you. And my journey now is, I feel kind of like I'm floating, like free like this. And like the containment is not so much needed there. But it's very much valued and seen why it's there. So examine these things. The masculine and the feminine is a very beautiful topic. It will really help you understand this world. And if you are coming here because you've come to my channel through non-duality or something like that, go into the masculine and the feminine. You will understand the true nature of non-duality, because you see, non-duality is not saying that it's not this, it's not that, it's not that. It's saying it's everything and it's nothing, but it's never excluding something. Everything is okay. Everything is accepted here. And so because of that, you are perfect. If nobody's ever told you that, watch some of my videos. I want you to really know the truth of what's happening here. It's not a mistake that you're here. It's not a mistake that you're watching this. It's time for your heart to open. It's time for you to set into your heart and your awareness. So I hope that this video shed some light for you and just was an interesting talk for you at least. If you like it, give me a thumbs up, share it with other people, just comment down below so that the algorithm can share my videos with others. Thank you so much for watching. I love you all.